speaker will be Will White. Will has been leading the Tucson Office of Land Advisors since 2001. He and his firm are focused on the sale of larger tracts of land for master plan communities and sale of production lots to home builders. Will White.
Good morning. I'm getting a lot of deja vu out there again. It's almost on a weekly basis, so I catch myself saying, that looks like '05 again, that looks like '06 again. And in many ways it is, and some of the activity that we're seeing, especially dominated by the publicly traded home builders, is really running that. So they swore they would never build another lot in Tucson. They would only buy finished lots as they learned their lesson. That is all that's going to happen over the next 2 to 3 years. They will be constructing lots. They're doing a lot of it right now. They said they would watch where they price land and how they were going to buy deals and make sure that they could make money. We're starting deals, now we're seeing in the high areas land going for $200,000, $300,000 an acre again to those guys. That has all been erased completely. So, but the biggest point is that we've never had a time in Tucson's history that you've had, this depletion of land inventory and nobody bothered to replace any of it. So I'll walk through a little bit of that today, but that's really what I want to focus on, and we've been harping on that for 5 years. We are running into a major traffic jam that's going to happen here in 2014, and I don't see really any way around it. So it's going to really affect our ability to meet consumer demand for these builders unless something pretty drastic happens, but it's still going to be tough to see that happening. But it's definitely positive, and the land market is really moving fast. Okay, so let's get into it. There, in 2012, the home builders purchased almost 1,700 lots here. That was about 4 times as many lots as they bought in 2011. 2011, the bulk of the lots they bought were finished lots. There was a nice mix in 2012, getting off of the finished lots, going back to the home builders purchasing platted lots and actually starting to develop again. So that was a fourfold increase over 11. This year, based on what is transacting right now and what will keep going for the rest of the year, there should be 3,000 lots purchased by home builders this year. That will be almost twice as many as last year and 7 times as many as 2011. Including those 3,000 lots, we figure there's about 4,500 lots now being prepared, either in transactions or owners finishing entitlements, or builders actually doing land deals again where they're going to take land through the process. And like I talked about, the land values are back to 2006 pricing, especially in our Tangerine Corridor area, our A and B areas, but it's starting to leak over into Vail and to North Marana, and some of these areas are going to start to move up. And it's really just a supply and demand factor. Our finished lot inventory will be totally gone in 12 or 18 months, and I probably peg that second half of 2014. So now with that happening, the A locations and the B locations, we're seeing the paper lots, undeveloped, selling for $30,000 to $40,000 a piece, $150,000, $200,000 an acre for that land. So just amazing things have happened, because if we look in some of those areas 18 months ago, the land was worth 0. Okay, so the same trends, let's just talk about how this geographically is happening. Nothing much has changed. We looked at these previous growth areas and really this contraction back to the metro area. The thing is, with permit volume, until we really get that volume back up to 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 permits, we're not going to need to expand these growth areas. There's probably enough to cover that, but I mean, we could be back up in those permit levels in the next 24 months. So that's going to be the interesting thing. If we can't deliver that land to those home builders in this market here in the metro area, we could see that stretch out again to just go to where there's available inventory. Let's talk a little bit about trends. This takes a look at single family permits. We're going to walk this back 17 years ago to 95. You can see where we topped out at almost 12,000 permits in '05, and just the crash that happened since then. The good news is that, well, I would sit in my office every year from '06 all the way to 10 and say, that's the worst it can get. That's the worst it's going to get. That's the worst it's going to get. And so in 11 I was correct, and then all of a sudden it started moving back up. But we're moving back up rapidly. So we probably had a very good increase, 11 to 12, and this year, depending on where this shakes out, we're still looking at about 2,500, but that could jump. I mean, we've seen a lot of home builders pulling permits for specs and doing things that don't make a ton of sense, but it definitely will affect our numbers going forward, so we could be closer to 2,500 to 3,000 in there. And this is interesting. This is something that we just took a look at, and I broke up those same years into blocks of five-year blocks, basically, on what we permitted. And what it's showing, really 95 to 99, we did 30,000 permits roughly. 2000 to 2004, 40,000. And then even during the slide down from 05 to 09, we still did 30,000, including the big year there. And so if I look at these and we averaged out in 5-year blocks, this whole chart, we're still averaging in a 5-year span 27,000 permits here, which means that we need that many lots to continue to deliver that. And that's the key, is that's a good metric for Tucson to look at, and that's part of the problem that we're having. So I'll talk quickly about this, but this is my big point because I really, it's really important for everyone to understand what's happening here. This is a look at the permits all the way down through the worst time in Tucson's history, basically. And in that time, we still used 34,000 lots in the metro area through here. And nobody bothered to replace any of that inventory. Nobody wanted to. Nobody wanted to spend their cash to do it. Nobody wanted to get financing to do it. So all of a sudden, we get back to a point in 12 where we're correcting through that market. We're starting to come back out of this and go the other direction, and all of a sudden there's no lots ready for everybody. That's the problem that we're facing. So now let's look out just the next 5 years, going out to 2017. These are based on some new U of A numbers that came out. Could be arguably a little bit optimistic, but getting to 6,600 permits by 2017, even if we discounted that a little bit. To get to that level, we need 26,000 lots to be built here in Tucson. We figure our current lot count on the ground is 4,000, so we still need to be able to build, in our metro area, 22,000 lots here, just to get to a decent permit number by 2017. Pretty daunting task. And this red line here shows you that is when we are going to run out of that inventory. So unless the home builders get very active this year and next year, they're not going to be able to have lots ready to meet a 5,000 or 5,700 number by 2015. And if they're not ready for that, then they're definitely not going to be ready for 6,600 the next year and 6,600 the year after that. And just to compound and to really bring this home here, let's go out 10 years. This looks like a 10-year chart that is based off these U of A numbers to go on single-family permits. Take it to 8,700 permits in 2012. Pretty reasonable. We topped out at 12,000, I think 10 years from now. That's a pretty reasonable number. To do that and accommodate that, we need to have 65,000 lots built in the next 10 years here. So we take away the 4,000 that we have. Basically, we need to find places in the metro area to build 61,000 lots. And you can try to rack your brain on where that might happen, but if I took the balance of Gladden Farms and we built that all out at once, that's 2,000 lots. Okay, that's not even a drop in the bucket. If we take away the balance of all the master plan communities and decided to construct all those lots and build them all out, we might get today to, maybe 20,000, 25,000 if we did it all at once. So there's just really this problem that's happening because we cannot find a way to get the land. And the state land department is probably going to become, a really key player here because we need to release some extra land out. And this is just 10 years. This isn't a long span. So let's take a look at basically where the activities happened so far. This has been, since 09 to current. It's really been focused along the Tangerine corridor from, call it Dove Mountain to Rancho Vistoso. Some of the largest transactions are still pending there. There's probably close to $100 million in land transactions that will close before the third quarter up in this area that are major transactions that will happen. That's going to change the face of that, but what it also does is eliminate all that inventory from the marketplace. And for that area, the home builders are choosing to control all the inventory themselves. These publicly traded builders, for the first quarter of this year, their market share in permits was about 93%. So we are fully being dominated by the publicly traded home builders, and until they decide to stop that, we didn't see that gain in market share and not wanting to do that, but we're seeing that now. We're seeing home builders carrying 30% market share, the next one's at 25, the next one's at 15, and it was difficult to be 10. So they're doing bigger deals and they're controlling the key inventory. Tangerine, Cortero, I-19 and Rancho Cerrito, that's been a lot of the activity over the last couple of years, and that'll continue to do well. But Tangerine will be done here this year. Cortero will be pretty much eliminated. So we've got to look to these future areas that's really looking like it's going to be Vail. Vail has started. If you drive out there now, there's a lot of construction going on, both residentially and commercially. The southwest area is starting to pick up with transferring older deals into new hands that are now furthering entitlements to bring new projects on. And then North Marana as well has the land to continue to grow. That's one area that we can count on for Tucson that will be able to supply inventory. And just looking at the pricing quickly, this is on a finished lot, front footage basis. The highest prices in the market are commanding, you know, up at Rancho Vistoso and Dove Mountain for sure. Those land deals those prices are $200,000 and moving up to $300,000 per acre to the home builders on a finished lot basis. We've got, and Marana is coming back around as well. Cortero's at about 1,100. Southwest has still worked out some distressed deals that have kept those prices a little bit suppressed at 700. Same way South is starting to build back up, starting at 1,000, probably moving its way up in Rancho Sarita. And then you've got, what's interesting is Vail and the I-10 corridor as well. Vail, when we finished a deal back in February, just set new numbers at $1,100 a finished lot, or front foot finished lot, which that land 18 months ago was worth zero. So $0 to $100,000 an acre in 18 months is pretty interesting stuff. So just going forward to wrap up, 2013, we're starting to see that supply of the land, you know, rapidly decreasing, and it's just going to be interesting to see how that is addressed. But I'm getting the feeling from the home builders that we deal with that they're actively aware of that, and they're going to be willing to pursue that pretty aggressively and do new deals. But supply and demand is so out of whack because we've got limited supply, we've got all this demand going forward, it's not going to change, so that's going to drive our prices up over the next 3 years here in Tucson. And then in addition to that, we've got new home builders entering the market too from Phoenix. They're just expanding Phoenix operations to Tucson to grow their Arizona division. That's just going to put more demand on the same limited inventory that we have. So all the prices are just going to continue to rise. 14 is going to continue to be active to resupply that, and it just gets more severe. I think in 14, larger transactions become more normal. You know, if we had to call it, you know, Armageddon or Carmageddon or anything, I mean, I think we've got Lotageddon here, I think. And I'm going to put that date really at September 17th of 2014, that we run out of our finished lots right now, unless we really get ahead of that and start doing deals. And then most of these major investments have been made in Tucson, which has cleaned this up pretty well. Tucson's very stable going forward. A lot of the distress and bigger problems have been solved. But we get to 2015, it's just got to be active to rebuild in that lot supply, and that's just going to keep this continuing for, like I said, the next 3 years. Supply and demand get rapidly out of sync in 15 if we don't do anything about it. And then, you know, my basic take on this is home builders are going to need to be purchasing to keep up pace here, 3,500 lots a year. Annually here. I mean, we just have to do that to meet the demand that we're going to have. And that's if permits just gradually come back up. If for some reason they start to move, then we really have a more severe problem. So, you know, all this just equates to land values are on an upward trend. And again, I think the next 24 months will probably be the craziest in my entire career here in town, just because of all these factors. And I think that we've got, you know, quickly the basic is that we just depleted all that supply and nobody really bothered to do it. So now we're just playing catch up, and it's going to be a big race to do that. So thank you.